everybody, my name is Jamie and I'm here with Spring Stitch Knits. I am the designer and creator, and today I want to talk to you really briefly about how I work with my sweaters, how I manipulate gauge, how I use yarns that are not recommended for the pattern. And I'm sure there's plenty of methods out there, but this is my method and this is what really works well for me, and I think it will work well for you. So let's get started. I want to talk to you really simply about reading your ball bands, how to find your gauge, and again, how to manipulate one gauge to another gauge and obtain the same thing. So my mom and best knitting buddy knit me this beautiful sweater about a year or two ago. It's called Fold Lines by Nora Gahn. You can find it on Brooklyn Tweed's website, as well as Ravelry and many other crafting sites. This is a fun sweater, and you can see it's really drapey. It's meant to be just slightly big, so my chest circumference is more of a 38, but I like to wear things kind of big and baggy. I don't want to be, sucked into a sweater. So I am going to knit my sweater to reflect Joan's. So what did Joan do? Joan used the pattern, and this is the pattern minus a few of my notes. This is Nora Gahn's Fold Lines sweater, and her pattern recommends a sport or lightweight yarn with a gauge of about 26 stitches across your 4-inch swatch. So tried and true, Joan did right on, and I love it, and I know what to expect and what I want to wear. I wanted to use this yarn, which is called Sublime, and it is a worsted weight. What that means is my stitch count is going to be much bigger than what Joan used. So let's just get started. When I hold up the part, so this sweater is knit in 2 pieces, so I'm going to show you one panel. I've only knit the back side. I'm going to knit the front side and sew and seam the 2 together. So, and again, it's unblocked, so it's kind of crinkly and needs to be blocked and washed. Typically you would knit a swatch and measure your swatch, but I don't always do that. Guilty as charged. I like to knit and work my increases, decreases as follows. I'm going to show you what I did was for my sweater. If you're to measure your gauge with a 4-inch across, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and I realize that I'm using a camera so everything looks backwards to you, and I apologize about that, but it's a 4-inch swatch. I measured 20 stitches across my 4-inch gauge, and what that means is the pattern calls for 6 more stitches. The pattern calls for a gauge of 26 stitches per 4-inch. I am knitting 20 stitches per 4 inches. So how does that translate with your sweaters? My math equation, and again, there's plenty out there, but the easiest way I have found to get in the ballpark of what I'm working is to find out what your swatch is and find out the rough idea of what you want your size to be. I like to wear my sweaters loose and a little bit forgiving, so I can wear, if I wanted to wear a tank top, a t-shirt, something underneath it, but also not to be constricted to a snug sweater. I like to knit somewhere around a size 42 inch in my chest, and that gives me 3, 4, sometimes 5 inches of positive ease to be comfortable in. So when you are given your pattern, you're given a listing of stitch cast on number, or cast on stitch numbers. So for example, the first stitch here is 114 stitches. So I chose to do 114 stitches because when I did my equation, it equaled out to about a 42, 44 chest circumference. How did I find this out? My equation goes as follows. You are going to find out what your pattern stitch count cast on is. So for example, this one starts with 114. So you're going to do your stitch count that the pattern requires, what your gauge stitch count was. So my pattern required 114 stitches. My knitted swatch showed me that I am knitting 20 stitches per 4 inches. And again, it's a 4-inch swatch. So my equation goes 114, or your pattern count, divided by my 20, or your gauge's stitch count, times the 4-inch swatch. Now that equaled out to me to being 114 divided by 20 times my 4, and I actually came out with a number of 22.8. Again, the pattern calls for 2 panels to be knit and seamed together. So while it says 22 inches times 2, because this is the back, I will knit the front. So this is 22, my front will be 22, therefore I will end up with a 44 stitch count, or 44 inches across the chest. So that's how I find my counts. Again, you have your pattern cast on, and that's going to be measured from under your armpit separation. So the pattern cast on is showing right here. I always measure under my arms because it's always going to be bigger up top here, obviously, but the peak or the bulk of the sweater at its largest point from separation is going to be right under the underarms. So always measure yourself. And actually my shirt that I'm wearing, well, it's this whole orange line is really, you want to measure it from the back and bring it all the way around to the front. So you're literally going to measure from right here. So my 114 stitches is the cast on up. So it's your 100, mine was 114. So the count from the pattern divided by the number across your 4-inch row, or your pattern gauge count, times your 4-inch swatch. Pattern count, gauge count, pattern count divided by gauge count times 4 inches. And that will give you your measurements that you need. I hope this is helpful, and I hope to be able to provide you with a little bit more expertise or some more fun tips and tricks. And if you aren't already, please subscribe. I would love to see you. I'd love to hear from you. If you have anything that you'd like to add to the table, please let me know. Thank you. Bye.